Cyber attacks represent a clear and present danger and a threat to the competitiveness and security of the nation. Yet our cybersecurity has been primarily driven by politics. Just consider the stresses surrounding privacy and security, where privacy is the freedom and ability to reveal oneself selectively, and security is the condition of being protected against danger or loss, both reasonable goals, but on a collision course nevertheless. Is it possible to have both privacy and security? If not, then which are we entitled to, no matter what? Where civility is defined as the sacrifices we make for others, perhaps an appeal to civility would prompt people to agree to sacrifice some level of privacy in order to promote a higher level of security for others. Whereas cybersecurity is reasoned about in terms of trust in systems, the collision between privacy and security revolves around trust in people. Just what is the cost of cybersecurity protection in terms of civil liberties? Is it possible to bring the rights, values, and interests of the individual, business, and government with respect to privacy and security into a sustained equilibrium? Privacy is not new. The first known use of privacy dates back to the 15th century. Yet privacy is not widespread. It is limited to Western civilization and in fact to Anglo-American culture, not other Western European cultures like French and Italian. Furthermore, many languages have no word for privacy, including Russian. Yet the issue, which is at the heart of democracy and for which blood has been spilled, is still actively debated and unresolved. Yet, like drawing blood for a medical diagnostic, it has been reduced to a simple legal test. Individual privacy, along with the legal test, is being threatened by the inadequacy of information technology trustworthiness in cyberspace. In the United States, privacy revolves around the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution and the 1967 Katz versus United States Supreme Court decision that supplied the test governing expectation of privacy. An individual is entitled to one's own subjective expectation of privacy, so long as that expectation is shared by society and viewed as reasonable. The question must be asked, to what extent is society a dependable partner in protecting this most precious freedom? There are those in society whose appetite for privacy seems infinitesimal. For example, the millions of Facebook users. Here, the enticement of social networking trumps privacy. There are others in society, though they would like to be secure, choose to perform a calculation of a different kind in refusing the health risk of radiation exposure from machine scanners, or the loss of dignity risk of intrusive pat-downs from TSA workers. Here, health and dignity trump security. Is it possible to have both privacy and security? If not, then which are we entitled to, no matter what? Just what is privacy, and why is it such a slippery slope? Despite the view of many that privacy can be seen as the right to be left alone, the working definition of privacy I prefer is more comprehensive, yet simple and straightforward. It is the ability to reveal oneself selectively. Others in a position to supply the needed bright line definition preferred instead to pass when provided the opportunity to posit one. Take, for example, the NIST IR 7628. Its authors chose to ignore the call to provide a definition for privacy. In the section devoted to defining privacy, it failed to do so, though it did state that privacy can be seen as the right to be left alone, and may mean many different things to different people. Nevertheless, it is instructive to review their thinking further. Without benefit of a definition, it proceeds to itemize what privacy is not, including no one universal internationally accepted definition of privacy, not a plainly delineated concept, and not simply the specifications provided within laws and regulations, and not the same as confidentiality. Still, without benefit of a definition, it suggests that privacy considerations with respect to the smart grid, including examining the rights, values, and interests of individuals. Without a definition for privacy as a foundation, and having stipulated that privacy can mean many different things to different people, what kind of useful examination of rights, values, and interests of individuals can take place? Yet, still, without venturing a definition, it circumscribes privacy in terms of four dimensions, including privacy of personal information, privacy of the person, privacy of personal behavior, and privacy of personal communications. This list is actually useful, but how each entry ties back to a unifying and constructive definition of privacy is necessary if we are to build upon it. To what extent do individuals retain the ability to reveal themselves selectively? This precious individual freedom, guaranteed by the Fourth Amendment, is stressed two ways: by the pressure to trade off privacy for the promise of security, and by the fickleness of the societal reasonableness test. Australian Minister of State John Faulkner agrees that privacy is more about making privacy decisions for others than about what we voluntarily disclose about ourselves. Electronic gadgetry, fueled by exhibitionism, business intent on trading our privacy for their convenience as they mine the growing volume of personal customer data, and government seeking efficiencies and promising security at the expense of citizen privacy, all contribute to the chaotic landscape of the privacy debate. To what extent is society a dependable partner in assuring the expectation of privacy and balancing the rights, values, and interests of the individual, business, and government? While societal reasonableness suggests that personal freedom, like Social Security number, is usually subject to selective revelation controlled by the individual holder, the information technology convenience afforded business and government for a unique number for every customer and citizen, and the widespread practice to use the Social Security number, have eroded the assurance of privacy here. While societal reasonableness may tilt in favor of security in many situations, it is increasingly opposed to TSA pat-downs and rejects violating the privacy of the person in this manner. While societal reasonableness may be tested by the exhibitionist behavior of Facebook users, this personal behavior is a privacy choice an individual is free to make in selectively revealing oneself. The question remains, once having revealed one's expectation of privacy through Facebook in one's youth, is the individual entitled to a do-over 20 years later when insisting on a different expectation of privacy? Or is the cat out of the bag? While societal reasonableness may view email headers as fair game for government surveillance, the expectation of privacy for the body of an email remains intact today. However, what about the subject line? The expectation of privacy for personal communication like emails remains not determined. Cyber attacks represent a clear and present danger and a threat to the competitiveness and security of the nation. Yet our cyber strategy has been primarily driven by politics. Just consider the stresses surrounding privacy and security, where privacy is the freedom and ability to reveal oneself selectively, and security is the condition of being protected against danger or loss. Both reasonable goals, but on a collision course, nevertheless. Whereas cybersecurity is reasoned about in terms of trust in systems, The collision between privacy and security revolves around trust in people. Just what is the cost of cybersecurity protection in terms of civil liberties? To what extent do the following questions revolve around self-interest or even selfishness, altruism, or even sacrifices made for others, and loyalty or perhaps betrayal? Will people trade off their own privacy for their own security? Will people trade off their own privacy for the security of others? Will people trade off the privacy of others for their own security? Will people trade off the privacy of others for the security of others? The politics of privacy and security serves to limit the means used to assure cybersecurity. While the Department of Homeland Security controls .gov and the Department of Defense controls .mil, the .com domain is not under control, other than the FBI. There is strong resistance to accepting government control among the private enterprises of the critical infrastructure, and there is the civil liberties tension between privacy and security. Who would be controlling authority to oversee and control the operation of scanning internet traffic at Tier 1 ISPs, or gateways, routers? Beyond detection, privacy concerns persist into attribution and forensics. In computer forensics, the basic principle is that once data is on a hard drive, it is there forever. The worst thing that can happen is that the data is overwritten, and even then, it may still be readable by experts. Forensics professionals are trained in handling and preserving evidence, including maintaining a chain of custody for every digital artifact right from the start. When forensics experts commandeer a computer system, they search files and previously deleted files, search hidden, encrypted, and encoded data, analyze logical and physical disk structure, and take fingerprints of documents and systems. They do all this during investigation and discovery in order to determine whether or not a crime has been committed. Insider threats comprise over 80% of data breaches experienced. When it comes to insider threats, some throw up their hands and claim that nothing can be done. In fact, more can be done to anticipate, protect against, and detect the employees who become an insider threat than can be done against other types of cyber attackers. How is the collision between privacy and security reconciled? The countermeasure to mitigating insider threats applies the principle of trust but verify when it comes to people by tilting towards trust in systems. For those serious about mitigating insider threats, consider the following actions aimed at providing full digital situation awareness. Routinely employ selective passive forensics discovery techniques on all employee computer resources all the time. Be aware of the privacy implications of this security measure. In reviewing the Common Sense Guide to Prevention and Detection of Insider Threats report, insider identification was exclusively achieved by means of digital situation awareness of the type included in the selective passive forensics discovery techniques for use on all employee computer resources all the time. The report states that in most cases, system logs were used to identify the insider, including remote access logs, file access logs, database logs, application logs, system file change logs, and email logs. The bad actor engaged in insider threat activity, whether as disgruntled employee, hacker, corporate spy, or criminal, has some characteristics that may be useful in detection. The individual is known. There is an extended dwell time in which to do damage and attract attention. There is an extended forensic history providing tips to intent and evidence of wrongdoing. The management team adopting this approach will have clearly demonstrated the will to act when it makes a commitment to employ passive forensics on all employee computer resources all the time. Further, making this commitment public may serve as a deterrent at some level. With this public commitment in place, the next step is to ask employees to sign away their right to privacy as a condition of employment, locking in the commitment from top to bottom. The approach illustrates the necessity of management will as the key ingredient in drawing the bright line between privacy and security in favor of security. Consequently, the approach is destined to invite pushback from several directions. Yet the WikiLeaks release of military operations incident data and State Department diplomatic cables and emails, and the promised business and banking files may tend to strengthen the management will to adopt the approach. Sticking with the discussion topic of mitigating insider threats a bit further, a strategy is an overarching plan to achieve a vision, along with the policies and protocols that link and coordinate the tactics employed. It is through continuously rebalanced trade-offs and adjustments in the policy and the tactics employed that a strategy and its tactics retain currency in the face of new knowledge and new threats. If the vision statement calls for mitigating the insider threat and the tactic chosen to implement the policy is to routinely employ selective passive forensics discovery techniques on all employee computer resources all the time, is the vision statement wrong? Will the tactic chosen realize the vision? Will the tactic chosen be cost effective? What are the side effects of the tactic chosen? How can each side effect be mitigated through policy refinements? With analytics and the clarity they provide, a bright line can outline the factors that need to drive cybersecurity. A cyber strategy is a policy composed of a collection of defined trade-offs made in advance with implementing tactics ready for deployment based on these factors. Where the inevitability of a cyber attack is a given, the power of trading off acceptance of some consequences in order to avoid or limit other consequences should not be ignored. How much lost opportunity, loss of availability, and loss of privacy are we willing to trade off to avoid cleanup and recovery costs and loss of trust impact? The power of the shutdown as a tactical instrument to trade off consequences should not be underestimated. Upon shutdown, we immediately incur lost opportunity and loss of availability in order to avoid or limit cleanup and recovery costs and loss of trust and loss of privacy impacts. The power of the social contract as an instrument to implement trade-offs should not be overlooked. Where civility is defined as the sacrifices we make for others, perhaps an appeal to civility would prompt people to agree to sacrifice some level of privacy in order to promote a higher level of security for others. Here, civility would lubricate the trade-off between security and privacy. However, the catalyst needed to spark the social contract is leadership, not always available. Trading off consequences is situational. For example, consider the priority ranking of consequences by reputation, economics, mission, and competitiveness. There are consequences in prioritizing consequences. In the reputation scenario, the highest consequences to avoid are loss of trust and loss of privacy, followed by lost opportunity and loss of availability, and then cleanup and recovery. The financial services sector, where trust is all important, fits the reputation scenario. In the economics scenario, An organization may place a high value on profitability, where the highest consequences to avoid are lost opportunity and loss of availability, followed by cleanup and recovery, and then loss of trust and loss of privacy. The energy sector fits the economics scenario. In the mission scenario, an organization may place a high value on ensuring continuous operation, where the highest consequences to avoid are lost opportunity, loss of availability, and loss of trust, followed by loss of privacy, and then cleanup and recovery. The telecommunications sector fits the mission scenario. In the competitiveness scenario, an organization may place a high value on its proprietary information, where the highest consequences to avoid are lost opportunity, loss of trust, and loss of privacy, followed by cleanup, recovery, and perhaps loss of availability. The e-commerce sector fits the competitiveness scenario. Considering the cyber tactic of anticipation, the goals to which an organization makes a commitment determine the consequences that result. Starting at the top of the cause and effect chain with a commitment to the goals of anticipating and avoiding, the standard of excellence attributes for completeness, correctness, and rules of construction are expected to be met, and the consequences associated with cost element impacts and end user mission impacts are more likely to be avoided. With a commitment to the goal of withstanding, the standard of excellence attributes for completeness, correctness, and rules of construction are expected to be met, and the consequences associated with lost opportunity cost and end user mission impacts are more likely to be avoided. With a commitment to the goals of mitigating and recovering, the standard of excellence attributes are unlikely to be met, and the consequences associated with cost element impacts and end user mission are not likely to be avoided. Considering the cyber tactic of attribution, the attack outcome provides a likely indication of the type of bad actor and the consequences. Moving down the cause and effect chain to outcomes, unauthorized access may be attributed to all bad actors except the inadvertent actor, with the expected consequences of loss of trust, and loss of privacy impacts. Loss of data may be attributed to all bad actors, with the expected consequences of lost opportunity and recovery costs, and loss of trust and loss of privacy impacts. Tampering with data may be attributed to inadvertent actor, disgruntled employee, hacker, and terrorist, with the expected consequences of cleanup, lost opportunity, and recovery costs and loss of trust impacts. Erosion of performance may be attributed to disgruntled employee, hacker, and terrorist, with the expected consequences of cleanup, lost opportunity, and recovery costs, and loss of trust and loss of availability impacts. Denial of service may be attributed to disgruntled employee, hacker, terrorist, and nation state, with the expected consequences of lost opportunity and loss of availability impacts. Assuring trustworthiness of information technology in cyberspace is inadequate. In addition, the expectation of privacy test associated with societal reasonableness lacks its intended applicability in cyberspace. Consequently, the rights, values, and interests of the individual, business, and government with respect to privacy and security cannot be brought into a sustained equilibrium because society has ceased to be a dependable partner. The lack of definition of privacy is the root difficulty in structuring public policy to address the sought-after trade-off between privacy and security. Furthermore, the politics of privacy and security serve to limit the means used to assure cybersecurity. While the necessity of management will, as the key ingredient in drawing a bright line between privacy and security in favor of security, has been demonstrated, the approach is destined to continue to invite pushback from several directions. Here's my contact information. I would be happy to receive questions and have discussions with people on this important subject.